Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Aaron Chun. Let's start with our Super Sports segment, starting with the results of the NASCAR race. Driver Ryan Blaney won the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series Championship this past weekend, driving for Team Penske. This is the first championship win for Blaney, and after the race he said, quote, "I got emotional in the car. I'm not a very emotional guy, but it's so cool. Can't wait to celebrate with my guys." The race was an exciting one to watch, as Christopher Bell, who was a top contender to win the Cup, midway through the event was disqualified as he slammed into a wall because of a brake rotor failure, ending any hope of winning the race or series. Despite Blaney winning the overall Cup championship, driver Ross Chastain won the Phoenix race, finishing about 1.23 seconds before Blaney, marking the first time since 2014 in NASCAR history that someone other than the NASCAR Series champion ended up winning the season finale race. The U.S. women's national soccer team is set to appoint Chelsea's coach, Emma Hayes, as the new head coach for the national team, filling the former gap coach Vlatko Andonovski left behind after his resignation. Andonovski was infamous amongst fans and players of the USWNT as he was the head coach of the team when they greatly underperformed at the Women's World Cup in August after winning the previous two tournaments. Hayes is viewed as one of the top managers in women's soccer and has led Chelsea to multiple wins and championship titles, being named the best coach by FIFA in 2021. Fans of the women's national team are hoping she can bring back that energy to the United States and help the younger team develop into the dominant team the women's team is known for being. Turning our attention to the collegiate field hockey side, it's bracket time. The NCAA announced the team set to compete in the 2023 championship, taking place November 19th at the Karen Shelton Stadium in North Carolina. Karen Shelton was the former coach for the UNC field hockey team, winning 10 national championships under her coaching and 25 ACC titles. After the Tar Heels won the 22 national championship, Shelton retired, allowing 23-year-old Erin Matson to fill the big shoes left behind. The Chadsford, Pennsylvania native had a standout field hockey career during her undergrad years at UNC, being called the Michael Jordan of field hockey. Matson's first season coaching the Tar Heels has been record-breaking as she led the Tar Heels to their 7th consecutive ACC title, making her the first coach in ACC field hockey history to win a conference title in her first season. In the Zone will continue to follow updates on the collegiate field hockey playoffs to see if UNC can defend their national championship under their new coach. This past weekend, the Big Apple hosted its most celebrated event for runners, the New York City Marathon. Beginning in Staten Island and ending in Central Park, marathon runners raced across all 5 boroughs, cheered on by thousands of New Yorkers who lined the streets. Tamirat Tola of Ethiopia won the New York City Marathon men's race in 2 hours, 4 minutes, and 58 seconds, breaking the all-time record. Helen Obiri of Kenya won the women's race in 2 hours, 27 minutes, and 23 seconds. This year's race had a completion rate of 98.9%, making it the 3rd highest in the race's history, according to the New York Roadrunners. Now, let's jump into some conversation. With college basketball starting, NBA drama stirring up, lots of football, headliners, and so much more, we've got a lot to talk about it. So, let's get into it. In the Zone starts now. Welcome back. We're now joined by Christa and Nate Reichley to discuss the start of the NCAA season. What was probably the biggest surprise coming out of this debut was number 1 ranked LSU's women's team losing to number 20 ranked Colorado for reasons some are calling the primetime effect due to Deion Sanders' presence in sports at Colorado. To say that LSU underperformed is an understatement, but maybe the Buffaloes deserve more credit than they're getting. Christa, do you believe this game says more about LSU or Colorado? And do you believe that LSU can bounce back?
I think this game says more about, well, actually, no. It says about both of these teams because LSU is, the defending champion, so you would think they would come out stronger. But for Colorado, they're a team that's been together for a while. They're the underdogs. Their coach has said that they fuel off of people dying them. And people came into this game thinking, oh, it will be an exhibition game, even though they're both D1 teams. They thought LSU was going to, blow them out. But LSU this year is somewhat of a new team. They have the top 2 transfers, the biggest freshman class, like the top recruiting class of the freshman class. And they're still learning to play together.
Right.
So I think that with that, it's still this early in the season, first game, stuff happens. And I think they will bounce back. Season will go on. They have a good coach. I feel as if that the coach will put them together, and if they execute the coach's plan, everything will go good this season.
Right. Nate, what do you have to add to that?
All I'm going to say is LSU did not look like that championship team. They looked sloppy. They looked not cohesive as the unit that they were last season. I also am fully a believer in the prime effect. Colorado and almost every sport category that they have played in the season have been an underdog going into the season, and then they'll show that they can kick butt for the first week. It happened against TCU in college football, and it happened here. It also helps when you have 2 players go over 27 points and then someone coming off of your bench who scores double digits as well.
True.
LSU, I believe, will bounce back, but they need to prove that they can talk the talk and walk the walk. I remember there was so much drama with LSU last season with all the crap they talked and all the drama with all that. Yes, Caitlin Clark and all that. I don't want to get into that. I'm just saying if you're going to talk all that on the off season, you got to back it up in the regular season.
And I feel like a lot of people were saying that Angel Reese and all the other star players, because they got so much attention off the court, that they NIL deals skyrocketed so much. So they was more so doing it for likes instead of putting in the work in the court. But we don't know what they do on their off time. So we don't know how much they was in the court at all. But, I just think that they will get it together, and this season as they progress, they're going to be good.
All right. Michigan State's men's basketball team was ranked 5th coming into the year, but quickly fell after a brutal loss to James Madison. The Spartans missed 19 of the 23 pointers they attempted, a stat that pretty much sums up their entire performance on Monday. Nate, is there reason to be concerned about Michigan State, or do you think them falling to 15 is a bit of an overreaction?
I think there's mild concern there, but I don't think it's too much concern yet. It's a long season. It's like the first game of the regular season. Teams are known for coming out, playing a little sloppy, playing down to competition. MSU at one point did regain the lead, and then they ended up tying it up, going to overtime and lost. That's the problem with MSU, though. They can't pull away. They can't, get a big lead and go with it. That's what happened in the NCAA tournament. They did get 2 big leads and ended up winning in the first 2 games, and then they got eliminated, I believe, in the final 8 or final 16, something like that. Tyson Walker had 35 points. No one else in the starting 5 had over, I believe, 15. You cannot be relying on one person to score all of your points unless you're going to have a supporting cast to back them up there. So there's mild concern, but there's nothing to be too freaked out about. It is a long season. It's a long way to March. It's like 6 months. There's plenty of time. There's still plenty of basketball. I'm not concerned.
What about you, Christa?
I'm not concerned. Just like he said, it's early. There's upsets happen.
Right.
People lose in the first game of the season, but I honestly feel as if their biggest what happened was there was a 3-point loss. They were 5% from the 3-point line. They were 1 from 20, and JMU was 8 from 29. They was 27%. I feel as if they got their shooting together, they could have won the game. I feel like that was their biggest underperformance there.
I mean, I think that's the most painful part for them. Even if you go 2 for 20, 3 for 20, that's a big difference in the game for as bad as it went for them. But, I mean, all of you are saying, it is early in the season, and those are the kind of issues that you look to iron out as the year goes on, I guess.
Yeah.
Over in the NBA, what was probably the biggest headline at the start of the season was the James Harden drama. But now that he's out of Philadelphia, things seem to be looking up. The Sixers are undefeated since Harden officially left and are already looking like a serious contender early on. Obviously, Harden was a serious liability to that team, drama and all, but it'll be interesting to see how his absence affects the rest of their season. Do you think the Sixers can go all the way now, Christa, or is it too soon to tell?
You know, I'm from Philly, so I would hope they would go all the way.
Yeah, I get
But
that.
I personally, even though they're doing good now, they're right now second in the East, they're under the Boston Celtics, even though they're both tied, but they do play tonight, so we'll see who goes up. But I don't think they might make it maybe first, second round of the playoffs. But right now, without James Harden, they're on a 5-game winning streak. I feel like they're doing really good. Tyrese Maxey, he's averaging about 25 points. He's taken over the team, showing he's going to be a superstar and a leader for the team. But I don't think they will make it super far. But they will have a good season. I have no doubt about that.
Right. Nate, what do you think?
All I'm going to say is Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. Those are the two duos in the league. Giannis and Dame, they're great, but those are the two that are going to be the most entertaining to watch this season because Maxey is young. Jamal Murray is young. They are both amazing. They're both in their prime. They're great to watch. Looking more at the Clippers side, I don't think they came out of that trade winners.
No.
You get James Harden, who in the playoffs shallows away from competition, has 1 or 2 good games, but then puts up 10 points. And then you also get a guy who's super old and has injury risk when you already have 3 starters who are old and have injury risk. So I could easily see that trade going downhill and them not even making the playoffs this season, even though this is clearly just an all-in push. This is their season that they're going to trade everything away, try to get superstars, try to get a ring or something.
Yeah, and think about how much they gave up for Harden. They gave up 5 or 6 players, if I remember,
And
a couple
multiple
draft
draft
picks.
picks.
Yeah, I mean that's something that if it works out in the short term, that's great. But you're going to be looking at in the long term, that's going to hurt a lot, I think. But I mean, speaking a bit more about the Sixers. It really just hasn't been Harden. I think getting rid of Doc Rivers, I mean, I don't know if I've seen a coaching change that has affected a team that much since another Philly team, the Phillies, when they got rid of Girardi. I mean, second Rob Thompson took over, it was like all of a sudden this team found new life. And I think we're kind of seeing something, I guess, like it with Nick Nurse and getting rid of Harden. But again, we're only, I think, 9 games into the year, I think 9, 10, so it's still a little early to tell. But the NBA has started a new in-season tournament that incorporates all 30 teams and offers the winning team a huge cash prize at the end. Many are wondering why the NBA would even implement this, and especially why they put it during the regular season. So, Nate, what do you think the point of the tournament is? Well, you look ready to talk about it. The way
I
you
have a whole list, ladies and gentlemen.
wow.
So a little more info about the tournament. It is a new competition that's going to be going down annually. It's an in-season tournament, which is just basically they did it for incentives for the players, and they did it to boost ratings at the beginning of the NBA season, not just the end of it, because everyone is so caught up in football and baseball at the beginning of the NBA season that no one really pays attention to basketball. And then their ratings skyrocket towards playoff time. This is just to be like, hey, come watch us a little bit more. Baseball just ended, so we're kind of doing a cool little thing over here. All 30 teams play in it. The top performers and the top team will win the NBA Cup, as well as also get the NBA in-season tournament MVP. That comes with incentives as well. The way the first few rounds work is that the teams are split into 6 groups of 5, and each team will play 2 home games and 2 away games, and then the top teams after that will advance to the single elimination rounds. So far, the games that they've played, there's no big surprises. Denver beat Dallas, the Pacers beat the Cavs, the Heat beat the Wizards, Nets beat the Bulls, Golden State beat OKC, and Portland beat Memphis. Are we really surprised by that? This is just going to be practice for the NBA Finals. I could maybe see an upset here or there, but I don't see this going any way that we don't expect it. I could see Nuggets coming out on top. I could see Sixers possibly putting up a fight for it. I could see Bucks coming out on top too, but it's just the only reason they implemented this was for ratings at the beginning of the season and also player incentive.
Right. Christa, do you have anything to add?
Not really. I just feel like, just like he said, we all know how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
this is just looking like the finals, but it's just an in-season tournament. So I really have too much to say about it. I don't really care for this.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of the season. Games are how many games are we in? 9 or
Yeah,
5?
something like that. 9.
So there's really no point. Just let them play, and then ratings going to skyrocket no matter what. Everyone's always watching NBA. It's not like the ratings are really hurting them.
Yeah.
So they are going to get paid at the end of the day.
I think they made new courts for this tournament, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
made
they
different court
designed 30 new courts for all the teams.
and none of them looked that great.
No.
Help me out. Like, I think it was either the Bulls or the Heat that had like some big quote at the end of their court.
I don't know.
No.
The ones I've seen, that's just literally like a strip of wood and then
Yeah,
2 strips of color. It looks like a toddler designed these things, like if I'm being
I
completely
think a
honest.
toddler might have designed a better court. I'm going to be honest. I believe a toddler might have designed a better court. But let's send it over to Vanessa Anders for the latest in Marauder Athletics. Vanessa?
Thanks, Aaron. There were lots of highs and lows for Millersville sports this past week. Starting with volleyball, it was a rough week, with the girls losing all 3 games they played, falling 3-2 versus Jefferson and 3-0 against East Stroudsburg and Kutztown. Football couldn't hold off Bloomsburg, losing 34-31 despite a strong first half. Wrestling had a good week, however, dominating New York 35-6 and finishing first in the Glenville State Invitational on Saturday. In soccer, both the men and women played and won their respective games against Shepherd and Lock Haven by scores of 2-0 and 2-1, respectively. The swim team won their meet against Kutztown 161-95, and cross country finished 6th in the NCAA Atlantic Regional Championship. Looking ahead, this weekend sees the start of basketball season for the women and men. The women start on Friday against Virginia Union, and the men start Saturday, as Livingstone comes right into our backyard. Wrestling will have another match Saturday against George Mason. Football squares up against Seton Hill, with men's soccer facing the same opponent for the PSAC Championship Friday. Now we send it back to the desk for some MLB World Series conversation. Aaron?
Thanks, Vanessa. Now joining us is Liam Crane to discuss the World Series results. The Texas Rangers are on top of the baseball world for the first time in franchise history. Aside from a bump in the road in Game 2, the Diamondbacks never seemed to have much of a chance. Liam, what did you take away from the series?
Well, Aaron, I wasn't really that passionate about the Texas Rangers. It's hard for me as a Washington Commanders fan to even go close to any Texas sport and feel comfortable rooting for them. However, I kind of hopped on the bandwagon, maybe a little bit late, but I love the Texas Rangers. And I think the biggest thing for me is that a lot of people were saying that these guys were underdogs. They were never underdogs going into this thing. And maybe I'm over-exaggerating how many people are saying that. So what I have written down here is that in the regular season, they tied the Astros in regular season wins. They went 90-72. They were pretty good in the regular season. They beat the Astros 4 times in Houston. In the postseason, they had a plus 165 run differential in the regular season. For Pete's sake, they were a juggernaut. So I guess in the wild card round, they beat the Rays. Am I correct there? I don't have table brain.
Rays.
Then they beat my Orioles.
And his Orioles.
And they beat the Astros.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do. You know what I mean?
No.
The Rays started out super hot. I was really high on them at the beginning of the season. The Orioles were the #1 seed, and the Astros were the reigning champs.
Right.
I really like what they did. I like how aggressive they were at the trade deadline as well. I just think this was the right bandwagon to hop on. I think there was a lot of positives here. I actually was watching the Packers-Raiders game weeks back. As you can imagine, that was the worst game to watch. But Troy
bless.
Aikman and Joe Buck were talking. I think Troy Aikman was like, I'm hopping on the Rangers bandwagon. And Joe Buck was like, I'll give you $100 if you name 4 players off that team. And he couldn't. And that was just like, you just like them to like them. You know what I mean? You don't have to know anything about them. But now that I do, I'm glad they won. They should have won. I'm off my,
and I mean, real quick before we cut to Nate, I mean, one thing that stands out to me is the Rangers were really good for a few months, and then towards the late end of the season, they started kind of falling apart. There were holes in their bullpen. I think that's kind of why they got regarded as a bit of an underdog going into it. People thought that bullpen was going to collapse.
Sure.
But Nate, what do you think about the World Series? I know you're an Orioles fan, so maybe you feel something, some kind of vindication.
That's one of my takeaways, bro. I'm glad as an Orioles fan we got swept by the champs. At least we didn't get swept by a team that ended up losing to Houston or something like that.
I mean, you got a point, yeah.
Talking about your pitching, though, their pitching, if I'm not mistaken, they held the Orioles, one of the most dynamic hitting teams, to a laughable amount of runs in the first and third game.
Right.
So I don't know. I think they're definitely going to come in next season as a very heavy contender. I think they have potential to be up there with the Orioles this season and next season and maybe a couple seasons to come.
Right.
And I'm just happy for them. First World Series win. It's awesome. Better than Houston, who's won it multiple times. Better than, like, the Braves or something. I don't know.
No. I don't think I'd be doing the show if the Braves won the World Series. I'm going to be honest with you. And real quick before we move on, I'm going to be honest. I still think the Phillies would have had a better chance. I'm sorry. I don't know if they would have won, but I think they would have had a better chance against the or other than the Diamondbacks. But I mean, it still hurts. I haven't been able to listen to Dancing on My Own in a while. I don't know, Callum Scott, if you're watching this somehow, it's not you, it's us. The new college football playoff rankings are out, and nothing has changed inside the top 8, which actually is a surprise of itself. Not many people expected Ohio State to be ranked first last week, but for them to remain first seems like an interesting decision, and that doesn't even begin to dive into the craziest part of these rankings. Nate, what can we make of these rankings? Do you agree with them?
No, but that's just personal bias. It's not about how well these teams have played, because some of them haven't played too well. Like Ohio State and Georgia, they're clearly not what they were.
Yeah.
They're not the powerhouses outscoring them by 60 points every week that they were. They're not lighting anything on fire or doing fireworks shows or anything like that. They're rough because a lot of their star players left for the NFL draft, which is understandable. But for them to still be ranked that high is a little ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
I don't think they should be ranked. Don't even get me started about Michigan. I don't think they should even be ranked at all until this scandal is like the cheating scandal or whatever. Until
Right.
that is cleared up, get them out of there. They don't deserve it. If they were to say, hey, there is no cheating scandal, there is nothing of that sort. We have looked at evidence. They present evidence to us, and we just know that they're that dang good, then yeah, I'm fine giving them a top 3, top 2 spot.
Sure.
But if they come out and say, yes, they have evidence of cheating, take away their spot, and put someone like Washington in, put someone like Oregon in, put someone like Texas in, that would be an amazing playoff bracket.
Yeah.
There have been it's been since 2014, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. One of those 3 have been in the college playoffs, and I am tired of it. I want all new teams. So this is what I want. I want Oregon, Texas, Washington, and Florida State. College football playoff picture right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I feel like a lot of people were really angry at these rankings, and I was one of them. I've kind of succumbed to the way they look now. I was begging Georgia to get moved out of the 1 spot, but a lot of people in here kind of pointed it out. They're not going to get moved unless someone proves that they're better than Georgia. And as crazy as it is to say, the only team that I've seen that I really think has that boom potential is Washington. I don't know. Right now, Georgia at 2 is okay with me. I think Michigan, despite this cheating scandal, should be ahead of Ohio State. They have the same stats. I get that Ohio State has beat 2 teams in the top 25. I don't care. That thing shifts all the time. Michigan looks like a more dominant team. When I watch Ohio State, I'm like, you're not the best team in college football right now.
Right.
And there's just this weird level of like logic that people use when making decisions that I don't think applies to the Michigan-Ohio State debate. Michigan looks like the better team, so they should be ranked as the better team.
Yeah.
But as far as Washington goes, they're neck and neck with Ohio State in stats. They honestly look like the same team, but there's something there, and it's that logic I'm talking about. I would love to see them play each other. I honestly think Washington would come away with that spot.
Switching over to the NFL, nothing too out of the ordinary happened in Week 9, but there were some interesting developments to discuss. Starting in the AFC, this conference seems to be the more dense side of the NFL, with lots of talent coming from every single division. A very interesting development throughout the season has been watching which team looks to be on top of all that talent. Coming into the season, the Chiefs were the clear favorites, but that may be subject to change. The Ravens, Bengals, and Jaguars, and many more teams have shown signs of dominance that may get them to the top of the AFC. In your opinion, Liam, is there a team in the NFL that is neck and neck with Kansas City?
I'm trying to make Nate an and his face as red as possible here.
Oh, boy.
I think the Ravens are significantly better than Kansas City. I talked about it in college football, but there's something where dominance really takes over the argument, and that's where I go with, right? And we'll talk about the NFC later, and there's not too much dominance over there. But Kansas City, the only thing that they have going for them right now is the fact that they were good in the past. Patrick Mahomes is easily the best quarterback in the league. Travis Kelce is easily the best tight end in the league. They have a duo and a lot of skill position players and probably the best coach in the league. They have a lot of tools that are going to get them far, and I'm a huge person for playoff experience. The Kansas City Chiefs are a top 5 team in the NFL. If anyone's trying to say the Dolphins are better than the Chiefs, they're wrong. They just lost. They're not dominant. They're just explosive. The Ravens, they're dominant and explosive. They beat teams by a lot of points. They're ruthless. I'm not talking 70-20 over the Denver Broncos. I'm talking about like 37-3 over the Seahawks.
Yeah, that's more notable.
That's what I'm saying. And they even beat the Lions. And we're talking about Lions as potential Super Bowl contenders.
Right.
When I think of a team that's probably going to make the run that we all want them to, except for you, I think the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, Nate, I can just feel the steam coming out of your ears right now. What do you have to say?
You've heard me say it. The Ravens will get to the AFC Championship and lose. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. They are like the Cincinnati Bengals to me. They can go far.
Wow.
They are dominant. They are explosive. I'll give them credit with that. Lamar does not have good playoff experience. The only person on that team that has very good playoff experience that I know of, but I'm not a super huge Ravens guy. I know OBJ had a very good Super Bowl run. He could have some great veteran leadership. Other than that, Jim Harbaugh won a Super Bowl, like 10, 12 years ago, something like that. I don't see them as someone giving Kansas City that big of a run for their money. At the end of the day, I still think the road to Super Bowl is going to go through Arrowhead or GEHA Stadium, whatever the heck we named it. Some other teams I think to look at in the AFC, no one in the East. No one in the East. That is the tank bowl division of this league at this point.
I can agree with that.
The Jets, the iffy. Bills, iffy. Dolphins, first round exit. I'm calling it now. Bengals, maybe. Browns, if they get that quarterback situation under control, that defense is elite.
Yeah.
I could see that being a team that gives the Chiefs trouble if they make it to the playoffs, and I wouldn't be shocked if if it was a divisional game, Kansas City had a very, very, very close game with them like they did in years past with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked at that. It's just Deshaun Watson's the question mark for me.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, Matt Canada's going to do what Matt Canada does. And no one in the AFC West is really that threatening to me. The Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos are all teams under 500. I believe the Chargers are at 500. Keenan Allen just got 10,000 receiving yards last game, which is great for him. No Super Bowls, very little playoff experience. I don't know. I just still see Kansas City as being a top 2 team.
You can't forget about the Jaguars either, man. I feel like that's a sleeper team where Trevor Lawrence is kind of on the incline as far as young, talented quarterbacks go. I think if they beat San Francisco this week, we know a lot more about them than we did before. I don't see the Texans making it far this year, but can we just give a hat tip to C.J. Stroud for that performance?
Yeah.
That was something. I love your point about the Ravens. I think that's a great point. Lamar doesn't have the playoff experience, and I think injuries are what plague them the most. So, yes, maybe by default Kansas City does get in, but I think for now we have to keep our eyes on the Ravens.
I've said this before when I've talked with my dad and with my grandpa about this stuff. Regular season doesn't matter. If you make it to the playoffs, you can get to the Super Bowl. We have seen that many times over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens in any sport, though.
Exactly.
Right?
Any sport, if you get in, you can make it.
Yeah. Well, over in the NFC, the same thing is constantly being watched. Only this conference is significantly weaker. After the top 5 teams, the drop-off in talent is significant. The Eagles seem to be the team to beat in the NFC, but have shown signs of vulnerability that could potentially raise some eyebrows. Nate, is there a team in the NFC that can compete with the Eagles, or do you see them going back to the big game?
There are certainly teams that can compete with them. Lions, Dallas Cowboys, possibly San Francisco if they get Brock Purdy back. to what he was.
Cowboys.
Did you watch that game? They got lucky. It was a game of inches. The tight end on that little out route, his knee was down. The ball was straight up, like that far away.
Yeah.
You see that? That far away. Dak Prescott's foot being out on that two-point conversion also screwed them over. But I'm saying it now. The Eagles, that was a clean game. That was a very clean game. But they got lucky. That was not, neither team was dominant in that win.
Right.
They just outlucked the Cowboys.
I don't know. I mean, Nate, I love you, but you're wrong. And let me say this to you again, but in a different language to really hammer the point home. 사랑합니다. 당신이지 뭐. Liam, what do you think?
What did that mean?
It means I love you, but you're wrong.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like your points about the Cowboys. I don't know that that's enough of an argument to say that they're going to beat the Eagles whenever they face them again. Who's to say that the Eagles don't get lucky again? And they're the better team. I think they could have come back from a lead. Anyway, I don't want to talk about the Cowboys. It's like a curse word in my house. The Lions are a great pick, but I think they're going to have to rely on that surprise factor. There's not a lot of playoff experience there, and like I said, I'm huge, and they're going to have to be healthy. And they're going to have to start using Jahmyr Gibbs. You got a first rounder there. It was your first pick in the draft, if I'm correct. Something has to happen with that guy. The team I like is the 49ers, and I think a lot of Birds fans will argue out of insecurity that the 49ers are frauds. They're not. They came into the season as the most complete team in the NFL, and injuries just do their thing to teams. They will bounce back, and revenge is like huge in the NFL. Do you remember when Brock Purdy went down, and then Josh Johnson or whatever his name went down, and then Christian McCaffrey was playing quarterback for them? That was bogus. I want to see a rematch between those two teams with a healthy. And as a Commanders fan, I want to see Chase Young thrive. And I think if you got Nick Bosa and Chase Young on the outside there, maybe you give that offensive line a run for their money.
I'll give you some credit. Yeah, I think the Eagles got a little lucky, but
Little is an understatement right there.
I'm just saying they're also the only team with 2 Christmas albums. I'm just saying. Well, that'll do it for this episode of In the Zone. For Christa Ricks, Liam Crane, Nate Reichley, Vanessa Anders, and the entire In the Zone crew, I'm Aaron Chun. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week right here on In the Zone.